Hi everyone, welcome to my live with Working with Cancer. I'm just waiting for Barbara to log on and we will be able to answer all your questions about work. Hopefully Barbara will be joining shortly. There we are. Hi Barbara, how are you today?
Great, thank you very much. Yes.
Just fiddling with my camera. So thank you for coming on. We've had so many questions from my followers about what are your rights when it comes to working with cancer? And it's one of the things I was clueless about. It's how I found you. So my story for those listening is I was a consultant breast surgeon diagnosed with breast cancer. And having had a year off work, I was given a 4-week phased return to full-time working. And I thought, that's not enough. I've had my own cancer. I need more. I don't know what to do. And a 3-week drastic Google search led me to Working with Cancer and Barbara, who coached me through and told me what my rights were because I was clueless. Could you tell us a little bit about what Working with Cancer does to start with, Barbara?
Yeah, absolutely. So we help people manage work, return to work, or find work if they're living with cancer. They may be at any stage of their cancer diagnosis, treatment. They may have advanced metastatic cancer, but anything that's about managing work. I mean, we talk about other things as well, but that's the kind of focus of what we do.
Brilliant. I think let's start with the crucial thing. A lot of the disability. Are you disabled? How long are you disabled for? Does it stop if you can drive or you're fit? Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so anyone who has a cancer diagnosis, and actually even if you're only just kind of undergoing tests, so you haven't actually been given a formal diagnosis, is covered by something called the Equality Act and 2010. And they're covered for the rest of their life, however well they are. So, for example, I fully expect to live to be 150 and to be probably caught in flagrante with somebody's husband when I'm 100. I will still be covered by the Equality Act. And that means that you're protected from discrimination at work, any form of discrimination in terms of if it's to do with your cancer. And secondly, you're entitled to something called reasonable adjustments to support your return to work.
The reasonable adjustments, it's a really tricky issue because there's nothing that says what a reasonable adjustment is. You can ask for the world, but does your employer have to give it to you? Can you help us explore that boundary a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's a classic English common law phrase, as I understand it. By the way, I'm not a lawyer, but basically what's reasonable for you may not be reasonable for me as your employer. So the issue is about asking for something that is within the bounds of practicality, really. But that actually means that, for example, you can ask for reduced hours, significantly reduced hours, significantly reduced duties for a significant period of time. And your employer is required to give them very, very serious consideration. This isn't a kind of, oh, well, for business reasons, we can't do that. They really have to have a really good reason not to agree them. So, I mean, if you start asking, if you kind of go back to work and say, like, I want to work an hour on a Monday between 10 and 11, and then on Tuesday I'll have a short lunch, but I'll be working, but I won't do any more. And then on Friday afternoon, I'm going to work between 1 and 1:30. I mean, that's a bit weird, you know. So it's all about what's kind of practical and common sense, really.
That's really, really helpful. Now, a lot of us, if you're not self-employed, but you work for another company, you are given a phased return when you're returning from sick leave or maternity leave. What actually is a phased return? And is there a right to ask for a longer one if you have had cancer?
Yeah, I mean, it's classic, you know, there's different companies have such different practices. So, I mean, a phased return is what it says on the packet, basically. It's kind of having a very gradual return to work. But, you know, I've come across occupational health professionals and organizations with policies which say you can only ask for this kind of gradual return for up to 4 weeks. And I won't use the technical term, which is, you know, not repeatable in public about that issue. But, you know, typically it takes most people at least 6 months to get back to any kind of normality in their working life, and sometimes a lot longer. And frankly, a phased return, which is a reasonable adjustment you can request, should be allowable for a year or more. And I'm working with somebody at a very big bank at the moment who's been told she has to get back to work in 4 weeks by occupational health. I have never heard such rubbish.
We can say bullshit. It's bullshit.
Yeah, totally. And really annoys me, because these are health professionals saying these things who clearly have absolutely no understanding of cancer. And sorry, just to continue, the issue about cancer, as you and I know, by the way, yeah, I had cancer many years ago now, is that recovery is not linear.
Yeah.
And that's the really tricky bit for employers and employees, or if you're self-employed, to manage, because it's not like every week gets better than the last week and suddenly everything's fine again. It's a really up and down roller coaster kind of process, and takes many, many months.
I think
return doesn't work.
I discovered that because I look well. I could have metastatic cancer now, but you see me, I've got my makeup on, you look well, surely you can go back to work full time. So there's that. But having been off for a year with chemo and surgery and radiotherapy, I could not think clearly.
No.
I was used to deciding what to eat, but to make decisions that affected my patients or a company is a whole other ballgame. And I couldn't think quickly. I couldn't multitask. And a half day of just admin duties, I was knackered. I needed a day off to recover.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us are forced to do more because we think we should. And then you're in, it's like, hang on, I need to go off sick leave again because it's just too much for me.
Yeah, and you know, part of the problem is not only managing other people's expectations, but managing our own expectations of ourselves and our families. You know, we're all under pressure, both self-inflicted and from friends and family, as well as employers, about having to be at the top of our game. And particularly, you know, with younger, you know, alpha type people, everyone wants to kind of prove that they're not only, you know, they recovered, they're even better than they were before in about like 3 weeks. And it's, you know, it's just ain't going to work that way. No. So, and I think as our recent survey showed, you know, the psychological impact of cancer is really long lasting and significant, you know.
I was going to bring that up. So we've done a survey looking at over 1,200 primary and metastatic cancer patients, asking about all their experiences. And the thing that shone out for me was the mental health problems that these patients had. Yeah. The anxiety, the depression, the post-traumatic stress disorder. And it didn't happen for me until about a year down the line, when it suddenly hit me, the cancer, the impact that would have on my life. But you don't often get the support or understanding, again, because it's all in your head, you look fine.
Yeah, no, you know, I've had somebody who was terminally ill who went back to work after yet more treatment, having had a break in somewhere where she got a terrific tan. She was wearing a really little kind of white mini dress when she went back to work. And the first thing her boss said to her was, "Have you really got cancer?" And it's like, yeah, she, you know, bless her, she was terribly ill, but she'd made the effort to look terrific. And the other thing is that underneath all the great looks and being positive, sometimes inside you're absolutely broken in terms of anxiety, loss of confidence, worrying about aches and pains that suddenly appear, and oh, maybe God, the cancer's coming back and I can't possibly go back to my oncologist so quickly. All of the stuff, you know, I've certainly been there, and I'm sure you have as well.
Yeah. I think it's hard to balance not wanting to go back to work with the financial needs, especially if you are the main employer. And I didn't realize how much sick leave I was entitled to. I think in the NHS, I didn't realize I had 6 months full pay and 6 months half pay. Okay. And it's worth exploring, isn't it, what your rights are, so you know how much time you can financially afford to take off.
Yeah, I mean, no, unfortunately, what should happen is as soon as you're diagnosed and when you're in a fit state to have a kind of half conversation with somebody, your HR people should be in touch with you, assuming you have told them, which is helpful. And they should be giving you both written and oral information on all the kind of services and benefits and, sick pay issues, that so that you or your, a carer can interpret them and tell you what you're, let you know what you're entitled to. So often that is not done by, the HR rep or the manager or anyone, and you're left floundering around trying to cope with your diagnosis and understanding all the things that you're entitled to. But absolutely, it's important to be clear about, if you are not going to work during treatment, and most people don't, particularly during chemotherapy, working is very tough. You need to understand exactly what sick pay am I entitled to. If I've only been with the company a little while, are they prepared to make an exception in my case? What benefits am I entitled to? Employment support allowance or what else? So it's important to get that support and advice. Yeah. And if you can't cope with it because you're coping with treatment, then get a family member or someone else to help you.
Yeah, do the homework. It's really important.
Yeah.
So you've had lots of questions that have come in. I thought what we try and do is just answer a few of them and see if we can help people out there. So someone said, and this is, I never considered this. If you're applying for a new job, are you obliged to disclose your cancer? Because it asks you to tick the "Are you disabled" box. And I would worry if I said I had cancer or I was disabled, that they would exclude me. It shouldn't happen, but does it? And what do we do?
Right. So the basic answer is no. You don't have to tell anybody. All I would say to anyone is if you're clearly, if you clearly need adjustments because you're still recovering and, you still need to do reduced hours, then it's important to let people know that at least when you get to interview, but to talk with confidence about that rather than to kind of hang your head and say, oh, I'm a poor person, and I'm like, so you need to do that with confidence. The other thing is that one can be, I would say, what's that wonderful phrase? Economical with the truth, and that you wait for your offer of employment and then tell your employer. Let's be clear, it is absolutely direct discrimination to sack anybody on the grounds they've got cancer. Right. So if you're made an offer and you've accepted it verbally, and then an offer is withdrawn once you've told them you've got cancer, that is direct discrimination, and you could, if you wanted to go to court, you could sue somebody for quite a lot of money. But hopefully a good employer will understand the circumstances and say, no, that's okay. I'm taking you on because you're a great person. It's not for any other reason, not, how many days of the week you're going to work. So hopefully a good employer would still take you on.
So you don't need to disclose anything if it's not going to affect you doing the job?
No.
Because it's private medical information, isn't it? And it's up to you.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, it is also a private thing, particularly if you're sort of 3 or 4 years past treatment, as it were, and you're feeling okay, then, well, is there any need to? So I think it's a matter of personal judgment in the end. But my view would be you don't need to do that if you're feeling okay and you don't need particular adjustments to help you get back to work. Right. What I would say, Liz, is if you've just finished treatment and you're thinking, oh God, I can't go back to the old job, I'm going to do something new. Don't, okay? Because I always say never resign, because you have to be 110%, if not 130% of yourself, to do well in interview, to sell yourself to a different employer, and to take on a whole new role. So if you can possibly cope with being in your current job, do, because you're protected from discrimination and you're entitled to your phased return to work.
That's really good advice. So another question someone has asked is, I'm worried I will be performance managed out of my job when I return, so I can be replaced by the younger, healthier, cheaper, but less experienced person who's doing my job while I'm on sick leave.
Yeah. The good thing to understand is that being performance managed, if you have cancer, is technically something called discrimination arising from disability. So again, it's covered by the Equality Act. Because when you have cancer, you clearly can't, and you're still recovering, you might still be having treatment like Herceptin or whatever, you're clearly unable to do the job as it may be written or should be. So you're entitled to adjustments to have a kind of reduced duties. And as part of that, you should have changed objectives, reduced objectives, and should only be considered or performance managed, as it were, against those objectives. Typically, most people, after they've had cancer treatment or during cancer treatment, there is no way they can do their job as they used to do it. So if a manager starts performance managing you as if you hadn't had cancer, that is absolutely wrong and illegal. Now, there have been occasions, I can tell you, where I've been working or coaching with somebody and a cover has been brought in while somebody's been off sick, and the manager really likes the person covering the job, and is trying desperately to kind of persuade the person who's been off sick that maybe they shouldn't come back to work. You know, maybe they should do something else with their life. That is all, you know, constructive dismissal, potential disability discrimination. You know, so again, you know, if people have got issues about that, you know, they should push back, and obviously we can help people with that.
Great, it's having the energy to fight, isn't it? But good to know they can't do it. But this came up a lot of times, and I didn't understand it. So, if you're working for a company and you're on sick leave, do you accrue your holiday?
Yes.
And so a lot of people, so I was told, you can use the holiday you've accrued to extend your phased return. Do they have to force you to do that? Is it their individual policy? Can you say, no, I want my holiday, thank you very much?
Yeah, you can do. You're perfectly entitled to have holiday while you're off sick. I have to tell you, I've dealt with some fairly evil line managers in the past who have thought that was entirely wrong. But no, you can have your holiday. You can, but you know, there are people who just for whatever reason decide, for example, they've been on full pay, they're about to go on half pay after 6 months, you know, the example you gave earlier, and they'll say, no, actually I'm happy to use some of my annual leave I've accrued to just have a longer period of fully paid leave. But that doesn't, by the way, doesn't diminish the fact they're still in, you know, they're still entitled to the other 6 months on half pay.
But theoretically, your holiday is protected and it's up to you what you do with it.
Exactly. Exactly.
But this is a question I got asked a lot. So if I'm legally disabled, can I have a blue badge and get easy parking at supermarkets, please?
I wish it was.
How disabled am I?
I wish it was as simple as that. I think the issue is that different councils, different local authorities have different rules. I would always ask, and particularly for those on, you know, really inactive treatment like chemotherapy, that I know there are some authorities that do provide that, but they don't always. I always remember also being told that Transport for London gave people kind of like a year's free travel. So it is worth checking that out too. I don't know if that's still the case, but it's interesting. The whole blue badge thing is interesting because technically you'd think, well, if I'm disabled, I should get it automatically, but that's not always the case, I'm afraid. And interestingly, somebody I've been working with a while told me about the fact that she was given a blue badge, parked in a disabled space, got out the car. You know, she actually has very advanced cancer, but she's relatively mobile, and she was absolutely slagged off by a member of the public for parking in a disabled space because she clearly wasn't in a wheelchair. You know, as you said earlier, you know, cancer is sort of invisible. You know, you can look perfectly all right, ostensibly, but really
like people with stomas who need to use disabled toilets to change, but you're not in a wheelchair, you shouldn't go in there. It's that really hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
Someone else asked, if you have a clause in your contract that says you're entitled to a discretionary bonus, what is the status if you're off sick when those bonuses are giving out? Are you still entitled?
You're still entitled to a discretionary bonus.
Really? Even if you're off sick?
Yeah. What should happen is the employer should weigh up, you know, how long you've been off sick for, whether you've worked that year, what your performance has generally been like if you've been working or before you were working. But they should take all of that in consideration. You are still entitled to it. And again, not to give you a bonus, quotes, because you've got cancer, potentially is, again, direct discrimination.
That's good to know. Now, a couple of people have asked, am I mad to work through treatment?
No. Because we're all different. So just to give you an example, 2 of my colleagues, at least at Working with Cancer, worked during their treatment and through, I think all, if not most of their chemotherapy, I could barely get out of bed. You know,
Me too,
I think,
yeah.
I think it's the one thing we all forget is that cancer affects us all differently. We know that.
Yeah.
And we know it more scientifically now. I mean, I read the other day that within a tumor, you know, the tumor itself will have different types of cells that are mutating at different rates. And, you know, so a targeted therapy on one tumor may not work on the other tumor that's sat next door to it. I mean, it's kind of weird, isn't it? To say the least. Fun. Sorry, I've forgotten the question.
Am I mad to work through treatment?
No, because if you can do it, fine. All I would say is, again, a kind of a coaching tip. If you feel you can work 4 days, work 3.
Yeah.
If you feel you can work 2 days, work 1. Because typically we don't realise how knackered we're going to get.
No. And don't compare yourselves to other people.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, that's the problem we also have, again, with employers. So the classic, I mean, I hear it all the time. Oh, yeah, no, I know quite a lot about cancer because my mother-in-law had breast cancer too, and she died. But I know exactly what it was like. Well, no, actually, you don't know anything. And of course, the other thing is we then compare ourselves to other people. So, you know, I will compare myself to Liz O'Riordan, who did all these amazing cycling trips and God knows what else. Well, apart from the fact I'm sort of 90 years older than you, you know, we have different physiologies, you know. So the last thing you should ever do is make comparisons, either as an individual or as an employer. That way lies madness and making dumb decisions.
And I think it's really important to say you are a patient and it has to be safe for you to go back to work, because if you are struggling, you're tired, you're mentally going to make mistakes to potentially harm other people, it's not safe for you to be there. Yeah. And that's quite a good thing to say. I don't think it's safe for me to work because I'm mentally not able to cope or physically not able to cope. And I don't want to put myself in danger and make you liable.
Yeah, well, exactly. And, you know, as you know, we do quite a lot of work with healthcare professionals and people in one of your WhatsApp groups. And, you know, we'll often say to them, well, you know, it's not going to help the patient if you're coming back to work and you're not, you know, feeling well enough to be able to give them the advice and guidance you'd want them to have. So you have to bear that in mind as well. But, you know, some people cope very well with their treatment and others don't. That doesn't make one person a good person and the other one a bad one. No. We're just different. We are.
Now, I thought as we're coming to the end, I'd just ask for some general tips on going back to work, because that's what Barbara really helped me with. I blogged about my treatment. I thought everybody knew what I'd had and I was ready to go back in. And you came up with some really pertinent questions that I hadn't considered at all, such as, what will you say when people don't recognize you? And what will you say when people ask you why you've been off sick, because they might not know? So can you give us some tips on how to cope emotionally when you're going back into the workplace, having been off for chemo or other forms of cancer treatment?
I think it's just worth thinking those things through in advance. You know, I'm a great one for believing in planning what you're going to say and saying it to yourself. So I think we had this conversation, Liz, when somebody says, oh, Liz, you look really well. Have you been on holiday? Okay, how are you going to deal with that? And the best way of thinking it through is to actually write down what you're going to say and practice saying it. Does it feel okay? Are you going to be upset in the way in dealing with that question? I always believe in, before you go back to work, particularly if you've been off for a while, is to think through those questions that people will ask you. You know, the classic one being, you know, have you tried? You know, have you tried goji berries or whatever? Yes. You tried CBD?
Yes.
Oh, I like your new hairstyle, although I preferred it the other way. You know, so there's lots of stuff on the web, and if you talk to friends, you can actually get the questions from them. The dumb things that people will say. Yeah. And there are some classic ones. Are you sure you had cancer? Because you didn't have chemotherapy, and I thought you only had cancer with chemotherapy. So think and then write those down and practice them.
And again, it's that no one needs to know you've been off with cancer because that is personal privileged medical information. So they have no right to know what you've been through. So if you don't want them to know, you need to have your excuse for being off sick.
Yeah. And I mean, you can say I've just been very unwell, like, you know,
Yeah.
but my personal, but we're all different, you see. I had no problem in talking about cancer, because when my boss said, do you want people to know you've got cancer? I said, well, hang on, it's not a social disease.
No.
And we were going through a major restructuring at the time, and I was worried they thought I'd be sacked if I just disappeared. So I think if you can get the word out there, but explain a little bit more, you know, I'm not about to drop dead. I'm just having treatment, guys. You know, use humor. You can use humor to your advantage. That's fine. If you say you've been sick, sometimes people will think the worst. You know, they'll suddenly think, oh my God, you know, you're
going to look like that classic advert of a cancer patient in a hospice, when actually you look like us.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know, I mean, there are lots of things I say to people, which is, you know, over communicate and under commit. So talk about your cancer, but don't make promises you can't keep, particularly in those early days.
The great tip you told me was think about emailing your line manager and get them to tell people before you turn up. So I want them to know this. I don't want them to ask me about it all the while, because at work I'm not a cancer patient.
Exactly.
That can be another really good way of helping, can't it?
Yeah. I think the best companies I've worked with, well, the manager has actually kind of, what's the phrase, wicket roll. They have prepared the ground in advance, so that the individuals, the team members are there to welcome somebody back, to, you know, have coffee with people, to be supportive. You know, there's so much a manager can do to support somebody coming back to work, or colleagues as well, obviously. But, you know, I've had people, they go back to work, there's somebody sitting at their desk when they walk in, they've got no access to their computer systems. People look at them, they do the kind of you're back kind of conversation. Yeah, that really doesn't have to happen. No. I always believe all this is infinitely manageable.
Definitely. It's just kind of taking control of the situation, isn't it?
Yeah.
I wanted to say, we've had quite a few questions about medical retirement, and we're not lawyers, we're not experts. I would look at your company's policy. In the NHS, there are two types of ill health retirement, and I had to go down one, which meant I had a very small pension. So I was financially at a big loss, but that was the only way I could stop doing my job. And it may not be the best thing for you financially, but go through your own company's environment, go to occupational health, do your research and find out what your rights are. With regards to benefits and people who are self-employed, again, we're not experts in that, but I will try and find someone who can talk about it. Any final tips for people, Barbara, when it comes to going back to work? And
what I would say is, in most cases we can do that, you know. So very often the problem with cancer is it changes your life irrevocably, and very often we have this enormous loss of confidence and anxiety about going back. But, you know, many people very successfully go back to work and actually are more successful and kind of grow through the process. So, you know, it can be done with some very simple, practical guidance.
And that's primary and metastatic cancer, isn't it? There's no reason why you have to stop.
Absolutely. And, you know, I think, you know, cancer takes away control of your life, but actually you can take it back if you just have the information and support that is available out there to you.
Yeah. And to anyone listening, if you employ people who might have cancer, because 1 in 2 of us will do, or you are someone who works and want help, how can Working with Cancer help them? How can we find out more about you?
Well, very easily, go to our website, www.workingwithcancer.co.uk, and contact us through that. And we provide one-to-one coaching, we provide workshops, we provide consultancy, anything that helps people manage work, return to work, or find work.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Barbara. I hope that's been helpful, and we'll see you all next time. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.